right, it is time for the John Riggins Show on Tuesday, September.
Every now and then, I think you might like to hear something from us. Nice, easy. But there's just one thing. You see, we never, ever do nothing. Nice, easy. We always do it nice, rough. But we're going to take the beginning of this song and do it easy. But then we're going to do the finish rough. It's the way we do.
And hit it.
Proud Mary.
Where is it? Can we fast forward that?
No, we can't.
That's going to take too long, and that was too slow, and I apologize. I'm John Riggins. Dexter Manley's with me, as he always is. Todd Castleberry. You already heard from Todd. Boy, I don't know where to start here. Obviously, good weekend, big weekend. I do want to start out with this, though. I think I have cracked the Da Vinci Code, Dexter. And that would be if anybody who's serious about watching football and getting, what do they call that, the most bang for your buck. Let me preface this with a story, a John Riggins story, that goes back, not unlike we opened last Friday's show about me and Alan eating the pie, riding the tilt-a-whirl. I used to work for the same guy that had a big ranch there south of Centralia, and he, same thing. We would go into town, and we would have lunch in town sometimes. It wasn't always at Esther Juno's. So we was in town, and I started looking at the menu, and I was adding everything up. Basically, you could get, and I think that it all came out to about $1.65, if my memory serves me correctly. You would get the roast beef dinner or whatever they had on the dinner menu that day. This is in the middle of the day, and then you get a piece of pie and a scoop of ice cream. And that all came to, we'll say, $1.65. Well, I started doing the numbers, running the numbers on it, Dex, and I realized I could get a hot beef sandwich, which to me there was no vegetables, which Todd, you would appreciate that. You'd be all behind it. It was like you get a hot beef sandwich, had gravy on it with a couple scoops of mashed potatoes, gravy on that. I mean, that was perfect. And then what I would do, I would get 2 pieces of cherry pie with double scoops of ice cream on the cherry pie. Now this all came to $1.65, the very same amount that Harold Barrett was getting, and he was getting the dinner with 1 piece of cherry pie, 1 scoop of ice cream. So this got back to the boss, Joe DeBoard. He was furious about this.
Game in the system?
Yes, because I was getting 2 pieces of pie on Joe and double scoops of ice cream, but he couldn't do anything about it. I'd say, what's that number say? 165. I'm like, get out of my face, punk. So here's what I'm leading up. The reason I tell you that story is yesterday I split wood for a little bit. And I realized, I thought, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to record the game. I'll split wood. And then I'll figure, I'll split. And I got all the wood split. And it's kind of ironic. It turned out that I split wood for right at 45 minutes. So I go back inside, turn the game on. Now the game is 45. If I turned on the radio and listened to the Booze Crew,
usually 45 minutes is a quarter.
Yeah, and so what happened was I tuned in, and I ended up watching the game, fast forwarding through every commercial, and I got to where it all came together at I was in real time by the end of the game. I mean, literally. At the end of the game.
The denouement, as you taught me years ago?
Denouement. The denouement was, that's not exactly the way, but we'll round it off. Close enough. Good word, Todd. Good word use. But, yeah, I mean, for me, I thought, now, once again, the NFL wouldn't want anybody to know this, because what it does is it gives you an extra 45 minutes to, do whatever you want on Sunday. You lose absolutely if you can live with the fact that you're 45 minutes behind the game in real time.
Stay off of social media.
Exactly. Stay off of social media. I didn't text Todd through the whole time because sometimes I do.
I was like, hey, big guy.
Exactly. I left my phone over on the table, and then finally, as soon as Zora said, hey, Tox, I text the game, and or I recorded the game, and then I came in, and finally I'm in real time now. So that, let me tell you something. You would be surprised at how much more enjoyable it is, because one thing you understand is, do you realize you watch a football game, you're going to watch 45 minutes worth of commercials. And I'm thinking, give or take, maybe it could be a little bit more, it could be a little bit less, but I'm guessing it's right at 45 minutes worth of commercials on any game on a Sunday afternoon. So that was my big gift to our audience, is that if you got a recorder, I highly recommend getting that extra hour, whatever you want to do on Sunday, and have the game recorded, start watching it, fast forward through the commercials, and you'll be there right at the end. And you'll know the end when everybody else does at the same time. So, you know, what's not to like about that theory?
Don't we all, by the end of a game, especially if you watch a doubleheader, we can cite these commercials by chapter and verse, because you're so sick of the same commercials, the same national commercials.
Yeah.
So Riggo's got a gift for everybody.
Yeah, it is. This is getting the double pies and double scoops of ice cream. 2 pieces of cherry pie, double scoop of ice cream, and the NFL. Hey, what are you gonna do about it?
But do you think that a game is what, 3 hours?
3 hours.
Okay, now, but actually the game is like maybe
there's less than an hour of
maybe
actual
7 minutes.
There's actually
playing time.
While the ball's in play.
Yeah,
Maybe
when the
15.
ball's in play, it's stunning. And
Right.
they put this stat out every year around the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Just how little action there truly is within the context of 3 hours.
Well, that's even if you count the 40 seconds. You know, in other words, when they start the 40-second clock, it is what you said. I mean, if you just went with that between the plays, it would be, I don't know, what is it, like 15 minutes of play?
15 minutes,
Yeah,
that's right.
it's ridiculous. Now, actually, maybe this is where Coach Rivera, he's got this figured out, and they're going to shorten the games so he doesn't have to use his timeouts anymore. They're only going to play 3 quarters. And so
We're going to start there.
Well, no, let's get into this game.
No, I think that, I mean, we can start there, and I mean, you've already let the genie out of the bottle. I think we have to address this, because I got to say, once again, I go back to the position I was in last week. As a player, believe it or not, I could appreciate this, although there's something really grates upon me about it.
And what we're talking about, so everybody,
I'm talking about if I was a fan, and I'm a fan now, and I'm going, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
And what we're ultimately talking about, and we're going to play the clip from Coach Rivera for proper context, is you realize this team was winning 20-17 to start the fourth quarter. They were winning 20-17, and they ended up losing again, but there was no fight halfway through the quarter. There were no timeouts taken. So that's what this discussion is right now.
Okay, well, we will get, because you're going to play the tape in a little bit, and we'll get into it a little bit further. Here's my conclusion after 3 weeks of football. I don't hate to say it. I mean, it's just the way it is. Nothing has changed, folks. Maybe there's less sexual harassment in Ashburn. And I say that maybe because you don't know what to believe anymore. Here's what I do believe, though. What hasn't changed is that, as we were told during the offseason, that now Ron Rivera is the guy in charge
of football operations.
Well, I got the
everything.
Right, but
New
I think
sheriff in town.
Yeah, I mean, it was that's the way it was sold to me anyway. At least that's the impression I walked away with. Yeah. I can see that what we were just discussing, where you don't use your timeouts. Well, that would be something that's got his thumbprint all over it. So he can say, hey, look, I'm in charge. Who else would do this? I'm the guy. But I got to tell you, based on what I see and what's happening and the way this team is going and that being a part of it, I'm thinking it hasn't changed, because I still think that there's orders coming from upstairs. That would tell you, because you're not trying to win football games at this point. You're just not trying to win football games. That, to me, is setting a deadly precedent within your own franchise, with your own guys that are on the field. And the fans, if you're a fan, what are you to make out of that? This give-up attitude where it's not, because the one thing that you can say, you can say, well, I'm playing the odds and I'm going, that's fine. But if nothing else, let me tell you, football, like a lot of things in life, is a matter of creating the illusion. And I got to tell you, Coach Rivera is not creating the illusion of a coach that came to win. He's creating the illusion, and he's so esoteric with his philosophy of this saving players or avoiding injury. It's like, it's hard to relate to. That would almost be, if that was his theory, that you would never play starters at all in preseason. You would play all the backups and the draft choices. I mean, to flesh that on out, that's my opinion. So I've got to believe, number 7. I mean, it's like the circus is in town, and Bozo the Clown is number 7. That you wouldn't think about after. I mean, there should have been 4 picks. One of the receivers made a great play to prevent a 4th pick. I mean, at some point you got to go, I don't know. Am I here to try to win football games, or am I here to try to see if this guy's going to work out? I don't know. That's a question that's a team decision. I think myself personally, I'd have to go with, I've seen about all I need to see right now.
Let's
try this other guy that's comfortable in this system, that played in this system for a year or two down in Carolina. See what he's got. Or now here's the other which I'm going to be honest with you. I've turned and I've done a 180. I want to see Alex Smith on the field now. I want to see what that's all about.
Please don't do it, Alex. Please don't do it, Alex.
I mean, the reason he's on this team because he's a great leader. He's a quick study. He's got this all under. Okay, give the guy a chance. If you're here to win football games, if this is here, this is where it gets weird for me. This isn't experimental. This isn't experimental theater or whatever. Then again, Coach Rivera's turning it into experimental theater because you've seen number 7 step off to the side here. The whole point here is he's a first-round draft pick, and they force first-round draft picks because nobody can admit we missed.
Yep.
We missed. And that further sets your team back further. That, in all honesty, that's not on Coach Rivera. That's not on him. That was the previous administration. So he can, he gets a free pass on that if he wants to move away from this. But my personal opinion is he can't because he's being told, no, that ain't the way it works here. Mm-hmm. It's just like, hey, listen, everybody else out there thinks that you're the man in charge, okay? But, hey, you're in my office now. Let me tell you who's in charge, okay? What do you think, Dex?
I'm in agreement with you. I just, this is his second year. He still hadn't developed. And I would like to
Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah, number 7. I'd like to see somebody else. Well, I'm not going to say Alex Smith, but the guy from Kyle
Allen.
Kyle Allen. I'd like to see him get an opportunity.
Well, isn't it the difference between, are you trying to win football games and be competitive in the worst division in all of football? Clearly, we'll get into that a little bit later as well. Or are you protecting the team and this young quarterback here because he's supposed to be the franchise guy? And that's what, back to the illusion you say, because clearly people are sitting there scratching their head going, man, where's the fight? Where's the fight late in these games?
Well, I tell you, my thought process was when Bruce Allen was here, when they drafted him, that they felt like they want to get that fan base to come out to FedEx and watch him.
Listen, you guys, I really want to hear your opinion on this. People don't come to watch guys that played high school football at the pro level and these hometown great feel-good stories. That's the other misnomer or whatever. People want to see winners.
Yeah.
Give us your winners.
Yeah.
I think that's 100% correct. I do think that there's, like I said, there's something that doesn't seem quite right about this. I think that Coach Rivera is saddled. I mean, there's 2 things going on here that would seem to me to be somewhat, if you're a fan, very frustrating. The one is that they didn't pull number 7 out of the game and give the other kid a chance to play. And the other thing is then this whole feeling like you have to stay with number 7 this whole time. I just don't understand it, and I know I kind of went up there for a second. And the other thing is the quit at the end of the game. I just played that. Let's just start with that. That to me probably is probably as confounding of anything that I can see that's going on. I mean, go back to, remember how many was 20 years ago, Herman Edwards? You play to win the game. Whatever happened, it's like, Coach Rivera, give Herman Edwards a call. Maybe he can help you out here on what your objective is when you go into these games on Sunday.
As players, how would you feel in the locker room afterwards? And this is the second game.
I got to believe there's a lot of people going, what in the hell are we doing out here? And that brings me back to something I want to say about number 7. Because, I mean, to me, it would seem like there's a feeling of entitlement. And this is not helping that. This, Coach Rivera caving into that and saying, hey, I'm going to take my lumps with it. You're basically playing into the sense of entitlement. I mean, if I'm I'm a veteran, and think about, Dexter, when you'd played 7, 8 years, and let's just assume, you'd never went through it. I'm trying to think if I never did either, for that matter, but I know how a veteran player thinks. And it's like when rookies come in, they're like the old saying used to be about children. They're to be seen and not heard. Well, the very first game, and the press played it up like, oh, that's great. And the press, where are they? They are just like lunch meat. They don't get it. Everything is namby-pamby and all that stuff. But I would say that, you look at what's going on with the team and how this thing is just devolving before your eyes. And everything is like, well, we're just going to hang in here and stay the course, and we'll see what happens. And I just don't think that's, I don't think anything good is going to become of it. As I said, as I just was saying a little bit ago, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed with this football
By
team.
the way, John, I like lunch meat. What kind of lunch meat do you think?
Lunch meat?
Yeah.
When I think of lunch meat, I think Alex Smith leg. I think he just.
Oh, I don't think of food at all.
I think of Jersey Mike's. I don't like it.
Boy.
2 big slabs of bread. Let's go to town.
Oh Lord! Well, let's take a listen to the cut from Coach Rivera afterwards, and he's asked the question relative to trying to defend the timeout situation.
I mean, to me, as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing to answer. I mean, I did what I did. Again, like I told you guys, my concern is about the development of this football team, not appeasing anybody that has an opinion. Okay? Again, I'm going to do what I need to do to help develop this football team. People say, oh, well, you got to give a chance. Yeah, but you also got to be realistic about what's happening in terms of the injuries. Again, we had no preseason to develop, and you look throughout the league with the injuries right now. Once we get past a certain point, yeah. But right now, hey, I'm working on developing my football team. This football team is a young team that's going to learn and grow, and we're going to learn and grow the way that I see fit for this organization. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he seems a little combative there, and you got to appreciate he's the coach, and he makes all the decisions of what's going to happen. But I'm not finding. He brings up something I guess is a valid point. There was there's no preseason. But then again, if you had a preseason, when these guys had to play in preseason games, which obviously exposes them to injury, which counts for nothing. I mean, to me, that his philosophy kind of contradicts itself. You can't play you can't. In other words, what my feeling is you have to protect your players. I like that. I think that's an intelligent thing. But where do you draw the line? Yeah.
What are you protecting them from? I don't understand that. Why did San Francisco even go and play a football game? They had 10 starters out. They're on their 4th DB. I mean, what are you out there for?
Well, that's true, but what I was trying to allude to, that the whole idea that you don't, in meaningless time, basically what he's saying is at the end of these games, they're turning into exhibition games because I feel like we can't win the game. That's to me, that's kind of I don't think that's a statement you want to make. I mean, that's basically what they should say. So let me rephrase the question, Coach Rivera. You felt with a couple, 3, 4, 5 minutes left on the clock that you couldn't win the game. So you're basically throwing in a white towel. And I think most people.
Where's that question?
Huh?
Where's that question?
Right, exactly. That you thought that because you're developing the team and you're just going to go ahead early on and you're going, what will happen then down the road? I mean, this is a valid question as you look at the NFC East. This, interestingly enough, a game here, a game there. I think somebody told me this. I think my daughter's boyfriend said 7 games will probably win the NFC East.
John, here's how bad it is, Dex.
Okay.
Right now, Dallas and Washington are tied in first at 1 and 2. They're only the NFC East among themselves, the 4 teams. They only have 2 wins. One of them,
out of what, 12 games?
In one of them, Washington beat Philly. Mm-hmm. The other one, Dallas came back in the miraculous comeback against Atlanta. That's it. Their winning percentage is .208, the second worst by any division after 3 weeks since the league went to 8 divisions in 2002.
What happened to the NFC East? It was the black and blue of the division.
Yeah, it was a tough one back when we played. There's no doubt about that.
That was the best at one point when you guys were playing for sure. But yeah, this is.
There was a point where I don't think Philly was ever in that mix. They weren't. But it was either the Giants, Washington, or Dallas was in a Super Bowl for like 10 years.
That's correct.
Right.
I mean, and they won several of those Super Bowls.
So back to, at what point do you give up the fight for your team, though? When do you decide? Is it the second quarter if you're getting it handed to you because you don't want to have guys getting injured? Is it the third quarter? That's the mentality. I think the fans are struggling to understand when you're seeing some great comebacks. You're seeing miracle comebacks. There's not this unbelievable football that's getting shoved down your throat. You had the lead starting the fourth quarter.
We said this last Friday, I think, talking about comeback. They're really prevalent nowadays. You wouldn't see this 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Just didn't happen. I mean, there was there was one comeback that sticks in my mind, but it was such an outlier. Was Houston against Buffalo in Buffalo?
Right.
Frank Reich was the guy that led second-team quarterback. Yeah, I mean, but that stood alone for years. It's almost like a track mark. Nothing ever came close to it.
Now, John, Buffalo was beating the living crap out of the L.A. Rams yesterday. Had them, I think, 28-3.
And they pulled it out, but it looked like they were going to lose again. And there was
should have lost. That was a BS pass interference call at the end against the Rams that really handed the game to the Bills.
Mike Pereira didn't agree with you,
but there was no quit. There was no quit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you're a fan, I would think you'd be very frustrated with this football team based on what Coach Rivera, the way he's approaching these games at the end, where he's making a decision like a corner guy in a boxing match where he's saying, hey, my fighter's done. I'm throwing in a white towel. And I don't know. I mean, at another point of this is where there's a certain grit that you developed if you can make the. I mean, in a certain way, these are tailor-made situations for number 7 to grow,
to rise.
You give him this, and if he can bring him back from being, whatever it was, 14, 10 points down, whatever it was, and you can win that game, tie the game, make it interesting. That's when you grow to just say, you're missing an opportunity here, just to say, well, the last series was pathetic. Go out there with it was about a minute left to go, and just run the football.
Right.
I'm thinking
they have no running game.
By the way, I got to get back to something I was originally saying, and I lost my point about number 7 and the fact that when Coach Rivera was taking the transfusion at the halftime of the Philly game, going all the way back, and this is where the press was talking about, oh, that's real leadership or whatever. I got to be honest, if I'm in that locker room, I'm thinking to myself, this guy's played 12 games maybe. He played 12 games in college as a starter, and now he's played maybe 10 games in the NFL, and now he's telling me what I got. I'm going, are you kidding here, kid?
Yeah.
Sit down and shut up. It'll figure itself out. You're making matters worse. And I'm going, who are you? Where did you come from? And you're like, okay, guys, the skipper's down now, so I'm number 2. I'm taking over.
Yeah.
I'm going, what a bunch of BS. I just, and that gets back to that sense of entitlement, wherever that comes from. And I think we all know where it comes from.
Yeah. Well, John, let me ask you this here. The word is that he signed a 5-year deal. Is he going to play out that Rivera? Is he going to play out that 5-year deal?
Boy, at this rate, no. There's no way. I just got to believe at some point. It's just, here's what you got to say though, and in all honesty, he had a great year. Of course, he had a quarterback that got the MVP that year. Went and took it on the chin down in out in what do you call it, San Francisco. Santa Clara, Levi Stadium in the Super Bowl, but they went 15-1.
Yep, right.
And went to the Super Bowl. But really a very up and down, uneven record, in 10 years down at Carolina?
9.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, I don't know. I mean, Coach Rivera's a, nice enough guy. There's no question about that. But you got to look at him, and somebody's got to be challenging his theories and his philosophies. Even the commentator, what's his name, Chris Spielman yesterday, was scratching his head about, well, I'm not saying one way's right or the other because he doesn't want to cause a controversy. But down deep, he's going, what the hell are you doing?
Everybody's thinking it. And for a Chris Spielman who doesn't say a bad thing about anybody, that was as close to the line as he gets. So I don't know. It's something that we haven't seen in these parts for a long time. And if that's the brutal honesty, okay, then tell us. There's no expectation this year. We're gonna see if this kid has it, and if he doesn't, then we're gonna draft a quarterback coming out. But we're not used to hearing that because every year We've all talked about, Lucy's holding the football with Charlie Brown and saying it's going to be different this year for the B&G, right? It's not marketing. So if this is the process that we're being sold now, that this is a 5-year process, ask the Philadelphia 76ers and some of these other organizations around professional sports how the fan base likes to hear every other year, yeah, but you waiting 5 years, guys. Here we come.
That's a lifetime nowadays.
I got a feeling they're going to sit number 7 against Baltimore this week.
I don't see it.
You don't?
That they're going to do what?
He
Don't
thinks they're
sit
going to
it.
bench Haskins this week against Baltimore.
They're going to see what he looks like in practice.
I'm with you, Todd. I don't think. I think that after what we've seen and heard from Coach Rivera, I think he's very set in his ways. I don't want to say stubborn, but Coach Rivera believes in what he believes. He's not going to change his attitude or his mindset necessarily. It's in a lot of ways, this would be the game. You'll be a quarter of the way through the season, and if you're number 7, it's a make or break game. I would think. At that point, because there's 2 ways of looking at it. And Todd, I give you credit because, you could just come out and level with the fans, guys. We've got a bunch of first-round draft picks on defense. They're playing pretty well. We've got a couple injuries now.
Right.
You got Young and Ioannidis down. Is it Leonidas? No, it's Ioannidis. You got these guys are injured, probably maybe out for a game or 2. Not seriously. You've lost an offensive lineman. Sheriff is going to be out for a little bit. So, we're in kind of a wait and see. We're going to try and control everybody, not get anybody injured. But, you can't play these games with that kind of a. How do you play football without worrying about
that? You guys,
you can't go out on the football field worried about an injury. If you're going to do that, I think it's great. Worry in the locker room. When you get out on the football field, that worry's got to leave your mind, or you're almost certainly, you're certainly going to get hurt. But getting back to what you were saying, Todd, just come out and level with the fans and say, we're going to play Dwayne Haskins all the way through this season, regardless. There obviously is going to be a time when literally, that it's going to be obvious, painfully obvious to everybody. I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying that if the time comes, you would have to take him out of the game because now it's pathetic. You know what I'm saying? You start throwing interception after interception. You just got to go for the kid's own safety. You get him out of the game. I'm not talking physical. I'm talking about mental safety, that you would take him out of the game. But at the same time, based on the fact you're in such a lousy division, you kind of go with that theory. Aren't you still trying to win football games and your division? Because you do that, it's like they say, just get in the playoffs. So you've got the worst division in football, and maybe you'll be eliminated the first game of the playoff season. But at least one thing, you win your division, you get a home game right out of the blocks. Who knows what happens?
Well, think about it this way. It's actually an opportunity because the division is such a shambles. They're talking about benching Carson Wentz, that he's – Philadelphia's got nothing. The New York Giants are a disaster. Dallas's defense gave up 38 and 39 points, I think, in the last 2 weeks. They're nothing special. Yeah. How low does the bar have to be for you to really make a move and go for it here?
Yeah. At this point, it's so early in the season, you never know. The kid could come in, Kyle Allen come in, and all of a sudden, because he understands things and he knows what to do. I don't know what kind of success he had down in Carolina last year. It wasn't particularly a lot, but then again, they had a lame duck coach because Rivera got fired right after the Washington game down there, which was early on in the season.
Right around. Well, it was
halfway
Thanksgiving.
Oh, it was Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
that's when they played it. So there were still about 3 or 4 games.
Okay, we've been focusing on the offense, number 7, quite a bit. Dexter, let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. Not world stoppers again. Cleveland ran it down their throat. They knew they were going to get a double dose of the running backs from Cleveland. Your thoughts?
Hunt and Chubb.
Yeah. Well, number one, they kept the Redskins off balance. They played on a short field, and I don't think the front 7 really got to the quarterback.
No, they did not.
Well, they harassed him pretty good, I thought, early on in the game anyway. He was running around, didn't know what the hell he was doing. First of all, you got to remember, in my opinion, Baker Mayfield, there's another wasted draft pick.
Right.
My God, he's a bust if ever there was one.
Talk about a guy getting rich off of those. You can't escape him on Sundays and all the commercials and thing he endorses.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awful.
He's under the gun.
Yes, he is. He should be.
I have no clue, but this guy, he's not the guy. He doesn't have what it takes. He's a poser.
Yeah.
What did you think, Dex?
I thought the offensive line controlled our defensive line. They were able to run the ball at will. They had a well-balanced football team, the Cleveland Browns, and the Redskins just couldn't get off the field.
That's a stunning
on third
statement,
down.
and he is correct. He just said the Cleveland Browns had a bounce. Nobody's ever said that about them. They've been the lovable losers forever and a day, but you're 100% right.
Yeah. They couldn't get off the field on third down, and the Browns kept moving the change. The Redskins couldn't
critical
get stops.
times.
Couldn't get stops.
Yeah, I mean, as bad as Mayfield, I think, is he made plays at the right time. What's his name? The kid, number 13. Beckham, he made some plays for him. But the guys that really, was Hunt and Chubb. I mean, without those two
that
guys.
Was some old school
and
football.
that is like scratch your head type of stuff. You've got, now granted, Young was out, but, he's new. He's a second-round overall pick. Looks like he might be the real deal. Don't want to take that away from him. And Ioannidis may be the most underrated guy on the defensive line, really. So his loss, even though he's not starting, he's not a first-round draft pick. I mean, unfortunately, that's the way it works. The guys that get paid the most money, they're the guys that play. But Ioannidis is as good as anybody in that defensive line, particularly in the tackle. And he can go anyway. He can play end. He can play tackle. He's very, he's very versatile. But to see them just gash this team constantly with the ball when you knew Mayfield couldn't throw it, so I think we ought to be ready for the run, guys. They're going to run first, maybe pass second, so let's everybody get ready for it. And you saw it at the end of the game the week before against the Cardinals. So the defense has got a lot of work to do.
A lot of missed tackles.
Yes, for sure. I tell you another guy that's looking a little weak is number 26. This guy's a first-round draft pick, and I'm going, you're the strong safety, and you can't make these tackles.
Who had signed the richest contract in the history of the NFL for his position.
Once again,
Landon Collins.
Well, that's not. Once again, none of this is on Rivera. So you can say that unless the guys that they took this year, that would be on his call. But these are guys that he inherited. But I got to say, I'm not overly impressed with him either.
Troy Apke.
Yeah, there's another guy.
You talk about, again.
He got destroyed a couple times.
Dexter, one bright spot I think we can all agree upon was Montez Sweat yesterday.
Montez Sweat played awesome. I thought he was not sensational, but he helped the defense out a lot.
He reminded me of you with that motor going a couple plays in the way he was hunting down Baker and applying that pressure. I was very impressed by him yesterday.
He did some great things. There's no question about that. I thought, that and it's funny, you're watching a game, and it isn't that often where, particularly a game like that, but you have a player like, he stood out. There's no question about it as far as all the other guys did, much more so than anybody else on defense.
Well, we know how bad the NFC East is. Now, here are some surprising teams that I want to tell you guys that have not won a game yet, and they're looking pretty bad. The Atlanta Falcons, 0-3.
And have lost 2 games for sure that they very easily could have won. Didn't they? They melted down again yesterday. Dan Quinn, talk about a guy that's on the hot seat there. Yeah. How about the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins, 0-3? He had a little bit better game this week, but he did throw 1 interception, I think.
The awful New York Giants,
9 points,
0-3.
0-3.
Denver Broncos, 0-3.
Were they supposed to have anything? Not necessarily.
Yeah, not necessarily. And losing Von Miller like they did. To me, this is probably the biggest surprise to me. Houston Texans. 0-3.
Yeah. You got Bill O'Brien, the Houston Texans that are 0-3 right now. I mean, he's got to be feeling a little bit of heat. I mean, this is supposed to be a playoff type team, which it was last year. And you got Dan Quinn, who's 0-3, and he's lost 2 games that they could have won. And I think I saw he had a quote where he's not worried about, talking about keeping his job, which I'm thinking, Dan, you can say, no, I'm worried about stopping people. Yeah, of course you are, but don't you think that... Well, I don't know, I guess. Well, no, I appreciate that because they say, when you got a little trouble in an aircraft and you're the pilot, they say just fly the plane. Don't worry about if you're going to die, just fly the plane. So you know what? His focus is correct. I have to correct myself.
The kiss of death is when ownership says, oh, yeah, you're good.
Yeah, no, you don't want to ever hear that.
Well,
you'd rather hear nothing than hear them say, no, we're standing by him. Because that almost means...
Bill O'Brien got a deal like Belichick. He runs all the football operation. He's almost like the president.
So he'd have to fire himself?
Well, Bill O'Brien have a lot of power now in Texas.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
There's no question because the owner, he passed away, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
That's
And the
correct.
son.
And I think his daughter runs the team now.
I think it's the son.
Is it the son?
It's the son.
It's all in the
One of those
family.
family operations.
All in the family.
You know, you would hope that Coach Rivera is going to change his stance a little bit because, based on everything we've said this morning, this division is winnable. And they may have the players on that team that could do that. I don't know that number 7 necessarily fits in. Maybe he will. Maybe he will. You know, I guess the only way you're going to see is if you give him another chance. But I'm saying if he goes out there next week and starts smelling things up, maybe you think about giving him the hook. But otherwise, this team is dead meat. And by the way, that was a nice little, segue. I grilled yesterday, and I had, I don't know, you don't get a chance to grill, do you, Dex, because you live in an
I
apartment?
don't know how to grill.
Okay.
You're not a griller?
Well, okay, but you are this. Are you a meat eater? Do you eat a steak every once in a while? Todd, you'll eat a steak. Well, I know that for a fact. Listen, I did a little experiment. One thing is I used this charcoal that's made in Japan. I think it's called Binchin, something like that. Binchin. Anyway, this stuff, you can actually play music with it if you hit. It's a completely different process than our charcoal. You pick it up, it weighs like you can't believe how solid and compact it is. I'm not going to get into the process, how they make charcoal here and and how they do it in Japan. But it's a completely different process. And the charcoal is so hard, it's very difficult to get it started. And so I got this stuff going, and I used my usual technique, when I grill. But I did one thing differently. I used a different cut of meat. Normally, I go out to this place that has prime meat, and I get sirloin, because the girls, they don't like any fat. Well, this time I got tenderloin, right? Mm-hmm. What you would get in a steakhouse, which is a top cut. And I just wondered, when you guys go, what kind of a steak do you order, Dex?
I don't eat steak. I just do fish.
You just said you was a meat eater, for crying out loud.
I don't do red meat.
Did you ever eat meat?
Oh, of course. When I was at Oklahoma State, I grew up in the hood. I didn't have steaks. When I went to Oklahoma State, I had a lot of steaks.
Oh, there you go.
And after you left Oklahoma State, you was making enough money you could have had steak. You never ate steak.
I just never eat steak.
Is that right?
Yeah, I don't eat steak.
All right, this is lost on you. Well, you're a meat eater, Todd.
Oh, yeah.
So what's your steak?
I like the sirloin, the filet. And
you do?
Yeah, I had an amazing porterhouse.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
See, the difference is the marbling in the meat, which is the fat. And there is no fat in a filet. And so I took a bite of it because I've kind of cut back a little bit on my meat consumption. I had fish last night. I had swordfish. But it's kind of tasteless, really. Fat is what gives almost everything its flavor, really. And I was kind of shocked that it didn't have any, it was dry and just what I kind of thought it'd be. I was a little disappointed, to tell you the truth. And I asked everybody at the table, I said, okay, do you notice anything? And so I go, well, yeah, it doesn't have a smoky taste to it. And that's one thing about this charcoal, no smoke. It's weird, no smoke. So you don't get that woody kind of charcoaly taste. And I went, no, that's not it. And then somebody finally figured out, well, it's a different cut of meat. And I said, that's correct. That's tenderloin, which is a much more expensive cut of meat, about twice as expensive as sirloin. But for the most part, I think the sirloin is, for our practical purposes, is a better cut of meat because there's more flavor to it, even though it's the only thing you get is, for people that don't have teeth, the fillet's the way to go. You can gum it and still get it down.
See, Riggo with another tip.
Yeah, exactly.
Another tip.
Just like this show. Just like this show, very palatable.
And toothless. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of TKRS. We'll be back on Friday with more life tips from Riggo.
Finish strong.